All right, chapter 14, we're almost done. Ready? Uh, we're almost to the end here, and here we are at the end, and I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm gonna begin the end by going to the beginning. So if you go back to the very first series of videos, and I asked you to draw me a picture of the U.S. economy, could you do that? What's that look like? Well, hopefully you would draw something like this. So the U.S. economy is the relationship between or among firms, government, and households. Right? And that relationship really is a series of flows. And so we talked about there's one flow that's all stuff, and then there's another flow that's money. And so I'm going to draw that here. The money flow, the monetary flow, money, right, looks something like that, okay? And as you will recall, the monetary flow, or the money, is spending that occurs by households, which becomes the revenue that firms get. And we spent a lot of time talking about revenue, haven't we? And economic profit and revenue minus cost equals profit, and a lot of time spent talking about revenue, okay? And then that revenue, part of that revenue is payments that are made that then become income for households, okay? And that's what the monetary flow looks like. The stuff, look at that, I'm getting fancy, purple. The stuff looks like this. So firms need inputs, and they take those inputs, that's messy, sorry, and they make outputs. And those outputs become the goods and services that households consume, right? And these inputs are the resources, right, that provided by households. And the number one resource that we talked about that households provide are labor. In fact, when it comes to resources, we talked about the factors of production, and we divided those resources down to four categories, right? So land, labor, capital, and then entrepreneurship were the factors of production, right? And then if you want to get technical, you can talk about the fact that households and government, or households and firms give the government taxes every year, and then the government supplies, some amount of services back out, and there we go, a picture of the U.S. economy, right? And if you think about it, what we've really spent most of the past few chapters doing is concentrating on this part right here, firms, right? So with that, I'm going to get rid of the government. I'm even going to get rid of the households and all of this for right now, okay? And I'll even get rid of the payments here, because we've concentrated on this, right? We've talked about the four market conditions that a firm may find itself operating in. We've talked about, profit conditions. You take that revenue, and once you subtract out costs, figure out the profit conditions, and that's really been our focus, all right? And what I want to do, sort of in conclusion, is talk about the labor market. These factors of production, right? Again, the number one resource or factor that households provide to firms is labor. And it's important across the board, right? Because labor is the most expensive cost for most businesses, all right? But for some businesses, for service-based businesses, labor is wildly important, because your entire business model basically it rests upon your labor. So let me give you some example. If I owned a pool cleaning business, okay, think about it. What's my business model? Cleaning pool. Who does that? Labor, right? There is some material involved in terms of chemicals, and you need trucks to get back and forth and stuff. But that's largely just labor cleaning pools. If I own a landscape business, same thing, baby. That's all labor, right? You got some, edgers and lawnmowers and weed eaters and stuff, but that's all labor. And so labor becomes acutely important for certain service-based firms. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about here for my concluding paragraph here. Now, before I erase this all, I want to there's a term that's used when you start talking about labor markets. It's called derived demand. And here's the, there's sort of, I've never referred to it, but generally I just refer to demand, right? Demand for, tacos or pizzas or whatever. Technically, though, that's called direct demand. And that direct demand is different from derived demand. And this is the way I want you to think about it. If you're talking about the demand for an output meaning it's a retail level good or service, that's direct demand. Okay, so anything that can be purchased at Walmart, that is just normal, regular direct demand. Anything that's provided by a service company, like getting your pool cleaned or getting a massage or getting a manicure or pedicure, that's all just, derived demand or direct demand. Derived demand is a demand that's derived based upon factor of production. So here's the easiest way to think about it. If it's demand for an input, it's derived demand. Okay, so here's an example. If I'm talking about the demand for dental services, like getting a crown put in, that's just regular demand, right? Because that's just a regular output, retail level, I need a crown put in. But if I'm talking about the demand for a dentist, right, that's derived demand. Because dentist would be an example of labor that's used in the dental services. Okay, so derived demand is demand for an input. Okay, so if I ask you what about a table? Is that direct demand or derived demand? Well, a table is an output. It's a retail level, good, and so that's just regular demand, right? But if I talk about the wood, the demand for the wood that's used in the construction of the table, that's derived demand because wood is an input in the creation of that output. Okay, so that's what's meant by derived demand. Now, one of the most important questions that a firm has to figure out, a service firm, is how many employees to hire, right? I mean, in fact, that's wildly important, right? Because your whole business is based upon labor. We already said labor is one of the most expensive costs. And so if you have too few employees, you're not maximizing your profit, right? You're not maximizing your revenue and then ultimately your profit. And so you're missing out on profit. If you have too many employees, your cost structure is too high. And again, you're not maximizing your profit because your cost structure is too high. So finding that out is important. And this is a simplified form of what firms go through to figure that out. Okay, so let's talk about, well, before I get into that, let's just quickly talk about the labor market. The labor market looks like any other market, right? So if you want stocks, where do you go? You go to the stock market. You want groceries, where do you go? You go to the grocery market. You want labor, where do you go? To the labor market. The thing that's a little bit different is the price of labor is called wages. Okay? And, there is, in theory, an equilibrium price or equilibrium wage rate in a labor market that results in the quantity supplied equaling the quantity demand, just like a normal market. And then again, without belaboring the point, this market operates like any other market. So if a bunch of folks move into town and there's an increase in the labor supply, the supply of labor, then you would expect the wage rate to go down slightly. And the quantity that's being, to go up. And, you see this dynamic played out in cities all over the place where, some cities have a corner where if you're looking to pick up some manual, day work, you go hang out on the corner, pick up drives up, negotiate a rate, hop in, and away you go. That is a labor market. And again, if a bunch of people, show up at that corner on a Saturday morning looking for work, then the wage rate you would expect to go down, okay? Now, that's sort of the definition of wages. Marginal product of labor. We talked about marginal product already, but marginal product of labor is literally, for a service-based industry, how much, if I keep my example of pool cleaning service, the marginal product of labor is literally how many more pools can the business clean given, if you hire one more person, right? So if it looks like this, if this is my labor, number of workers, 1, 2, 3, we'll just go 4. And this is my output, this is my quantity of pools that are getting cleaned. And if I don't have anybody, then 0 pools get cleaned, right? But if I hired my first laborer, right, worker, and 20 pools get cleaned. I hire a second one and a total of 35 pools get cleaned. Third one, then 45 pools get cleaned, and then fourth one, 50 pools get cleaned. Okay, so my marginal product of labor is how many more pools get cleaned with the addition of each employee. So, I hire the first one, 20 minus 0 is 20, 20 pools get cleaned. What's the marginal product? How many more pools get cleaned when I hire the second one? Well, 35 minus 20 is what, 15, right? What about when I hire the third one? 45 minus 35 is 10 more pools get cleaned. I hire the fifth one, 5 more pools get cleaned. Now, I mentioned before, the trick to all of this, the key to all of this, what we're seeking to understand is how many people, how many laborers should my firm hire to maximize, well, ultimately to maximize profit, right? And I'm going to give you the answer to that. You want to hire until the value of your marginal product equals the wage rate. Okay, so if I give you a wage rate of, say, 20, that's my wage rate. Now, what is the value of marginal product? The value of marginal product is simply my marginal product times the price of my output. So I'm gonna make a ridiculous price and say that the price to get your pool cleaned is $3. Okay, so $3. So the value of marginal product, 3 times 20 is 60, 3 times 15 is 45, 3 times 10 is 30, 15. Okay, so right, not that big a deal. Now, how many in this example, how many laborers should I hire? Well, I'm going to do it until my value of marginal product equals my wage rate, or this is the way to understand it. So the revenue, the value, right? The revenue that is being brought in when I hired my first worker is 60. And it cost me 20, right? As a wage rate, we'll make it per hour. So 60 per hour and 20 per hour, right? So he's bringing in 60 per hour, right? I'm paying 20 per hour. Am I going to hire that dude? Yeah, because he's bringing in more revenue than it's costing me. What about this guy? Yeah, I'm going to hire that guy too, right? Because he's bringing in more revenue than it's costing me. What about this guy? Yeah, I'm going to hire that guy too because he's bringing in more revenue. What about this guy? This guy only bringing in 15 an hour, and it's costing me 20. So I would hire, in this case, up to the third worker, because that's what maximizes both my revenue and then ultimately my profit. Okay. Yeah. If I had made this example easy and just made this 30, then same rules apply, right? Because I'm going to hire all the way up to, that's, it seems like, well, why would I hire that guy if he's bringing in 30 and it's costing me 30? And that has to do, if I graph it out and I stop here, I'm leaving some benefit, I'm leaving some revenue on the table. This maximizes it, and I get all my revenue that way, okay? So, I think that's it, right? We talked about derived demand, we talked about very quickly the labor market, we talked about wage rate, marginal product, value of marginal product. That's all I want you to know for the labor market. And so, in conclusion, this has been a very quick lesson in microeconomics. I hope you've enjoyed the videos. I hope they've been useful. I said earlier, and I think I mentioned a couple times in the videos, these are uncut, unedited, one-time, get them out on the internet videos that are not meant to be slick and polished, because I want you to come to class. You know, if you're watching this video, it's either because you misclassed or are quarantined or need a refresher, and I think you'll agree it's much better in class. So anyway, I hope these have been useful, and we'll see you in class. Thanks.